Welcome back everyone, this is Mike from ManaHoarders. In this video we are bringing you a commander deck tech for an Esper commander, Alela, Artful, Provocateur. You can cast Alela for 1, a white, a blue, and a black. She is a fairy warlock with flying, death touch, and lifelink. Her first ability reads, other creatures you control with flying get +1/+0. Her second ability reads, whenever you cast an artifact or enchantment spell, create a 1/1 blue fairy creature token with flying. Before we dive into the deck, let's go over a few key points. First up, the final price for this build came in at $65.31. This does include the price of our commander and all of our lands. Now do bear in mind, some of these prices will vary greatly depending on the quality of the cards you purchase, the vendor you use, and a variety of other factors. In terms of power level, I would rate this build at around a 7 out of 10 on the power scale. First and foremost, we will be running a very enchantment heavy deck. We have lots of enchantment creatures and a lot of other high value enchantments to keep our engine running. We will also be focusing on some token generation, both on our commander and some of our other creatures and enchantments as well, so we can swarm the board and overwhelm our opponents. And last but not least, since we will be creating so many creatures, we do have some ways to sacrifice them to gain some value as well. Now let's go ahead and dive into the deck. First up are our artifacts. By Dint of Thassa, whenever a creature we control deals combat damage to a player, we can draw a card. Charcoal Diamond can tap to give us a black mana. Guild Glow, whenever it enters we can draw a card. We can also sacrifice it to add 2 mana of different colors. Helm of the God, the equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each enchantment we control. Marble Diamond can tap to give us a white mana. Mind Stone gives us a colorless, we can also sacrifice it to draw a card. Sky Diamond will tap to give us a blue mana. Witching Well, whenever it enters it'll scry 2 and we can sacrifice it to draw 2. And Witch's Cauldron, we can sacrifice a creature to gain a life and draw a card. Moving on to our creatures, we do have some legends helping out our commander. Callaphe, Beloved of the Sea. Creatures and enchantments we control have spells your opponents cast, a target is permanent, cost 1 more to cast. Daxos the Return, whenever we cast an enchantment he gets an experience counter. We can also pay 1, a white and a black to pump out some spirits, and their power and toughness equal the number of experience counters. Daxos, Blessed by the Sun. Whenever another creature we control enters the battlefield or dies, we gain a life. Hannah, Ship's Navigator, we can pay 1, a white and a blue, and tap her to return target artifact or enchantment card from our graveyard to the hand. Kanji, Sky Warden. Whenever it attacks, attacking creatures with flying get +2/+0, and whenever he blocks, blocking creatures with flying get +0/+2. And Thalis, Reverent Medium. At the beginning of each end step, create X 1/1 white spirit creature tokens with flying, where X is the number of tokens we created this turn. And for our not so legendary creatures, Agent of Erebos. Whenever Agent of Erebos or another enchantment enters the battlefield under our control, we can exile all cards from target player's graveyard. Ajani's Chosen, whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under our control, we get a 2/2 white cat creature token. All Seed of Life's Bounty, we can pay 1, sacrifice it, and target creature or enchantment we control gains protection from the color of our choice until end of turn. Archetype of Imagination, whenever it's on the battlefield, creatures our opponents control lose flying and can't have or gain flying, and all of our creatures have flying. Archon of Sun's Grace. Pegasus creatures we control have lifelink, and whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under our control, we get a 2/2 white Pegasus creature token with flying. Auramancer, whenever it enters the battlefield, we can return target enchantment card from our graveyard to our hand. Baleful Eidolon is a 1/1 with death touch. We can also bestow it to give enchanted creature +1/+1 in death touch. Dawn Evangel, whenever a creature dies, if an aura we control is attached to it, we can return target creature card with converted mana cost 2 or less from our graveyard to our hand. Doomwake Giant, whenever it enters the battlefield or another enchantment enters the battlefield under our control, creatures your opponents control get -1/-1 until end of turn. Grim Guardian, whenever it enters or another enchantment enters under our control, each opponent loses 1. Hateful Eidolon, whenever an enchanted creature dies, draw a card for each aura we control that was attached to it. Heliod's Pilgrim, whenever it enters the battlefield, we can search our library for an aura, reveal it, put it into our hand, and then shuffle. Mesa Enchantress, whenever we cast an enchantment spell, we can draw. Perplexing Chimera, whenever an opponent casts a spell, we can exchange control of Perplexing Chimera and that spell, and if we do, we can choose new targets for the spell. Riptide Chimera, at the beginning of our upkeep, we can return an enchantment we control to its owner's hand. Shimmerwing Chimera does much the same. Shoal Kraken, whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under our control, we can draw a card, and if we do, we will discard. Soul Reaper of Mogus, we can pay 2 and a black, sacrifice a creature to draw a card. Starfield Mystic, enchantment spells we control cost 1 less, and whenever an enchantment we control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, it gets a 1/1 counter. Starnheim Chorister, artifacts and enchantments we cast cost 1 less. Thought Render Lamia, whenever it or another enchantment enters the battlefield under our control, each opponent discards a card. Transcendent Envoy, aura spells we cast cost 1 less. Wavebreak Hippocamp, whenever we cast our first spell during each opponent's turn, we can draw a card. And Whitewater Naiads, whenever it or another enchantment enters the battlefield under our control, target creature can't be blocked this turn. Moving on to our enchantments, Coastal Piracy, whenever a creature we control deals combat damage to an opponent, we can draw. Curious Obsession, the enchanted creature gets +1/+1, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, we can draw. Ethereal Armor, the enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each enchantment we control and has first strike. Felidar Retreat, whenever a land enters the battlefield under our control, we can create a 2/2 white cat beast creature token, or put a +1/+1 counter on each creature we control. Those creatures will gain vigilance until end of turn. Kasmina's Transmutation, We can enchant a creature and the creature loses all abilities and has base power and toughness 1/1. Phyrexian Reclamation, we can pay 1 of the black, 2 life, and return target creature card from our graveyard to our hand. Sigil of the Empty Throne, whenever we cast an enchantment spell, we get a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying. Steel of the Godhead, as long as the enchanting creature is white, it gets +1/+1 in lifelink. As long as it's blue, it gets +1/+1 and is unblockable. Unquestioned Authority, the enchanted creature has protection from creatures, and whenever it enters, we can draw a card. Vampiric Rites, we can pay 1 in the black, sacrifice a creature to gain a life, and draw a card. For our instance, Altar's Reap, we can sacrifice a creature to draw 2. Lofty Denial, we can counter target spell unless its controller pays 1, but if we control a flying creature, they'll have to pay 4 instead. Negate can counter target non-creature spell. Quench, counter target spell unless its controller pays 2. Rootborn Defenses, we can populate, and creatures we control gain indestructible until end of turn. Spell Pierce, counter target non-creature spell unless its controller pays 2. Unbreakable Formation, creatures we control gain indestructible until end of turn. And Village Rites, we can sacrifice a creature to draw 2 cards. Moving on to our sorceries, Dance of the Bants can help us get our artifacts and non-aura enchantments back to the battlefield. And if we pay 6 or more into X, those permanents are 4/4 creatures in addition to their other types. Distant Melody, we can choose a creature type and then draw a card for each permanent we control of that type. Notorious Throng will help us create some 1/1 black fairy rogue creature tokens of flying, and if the prowl cost was paid, we will take an extra turn. Preordain, we can scry 2 and then draw a card. Reprocess, we can sacrifice any number of artifacts, creatures, and lands and draw a card for each permanent sacrificed this way. Restless Dreams is an additional cost. We can discard X cards from our hand and return X target creature cards from our graveyard to our hand. And Winged Worlds cost 1 less if we control a creature with flying. It will allow us to draw 2 cards. And last but not least is our mana base. We are keeping things very basic with 11 basic islands, 12 basic plains, and 12 basic swamps. And just like that, we've reached the end of this Commander Deck Tech. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, tell your friends about us, and leave a comment down below. Let us know what commanders you would like to see us build around in the future. We really appreciate all of your support.